Welcome to the Angels, Magic and Joy podcast. This podcast is for those who seek answers from above, guidance and magical inspiration.
Immerse yourself in the realms of magic, angels, fairies, unicorns, dragons, and so much more. I'm Kirsty Jandrell, and I'm delighted to be here with you today.
And I am Kate Rajpal.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special edition of the Angels, Magic and Joy podcast. And today we are so excited, Kate and I, to welcome, I think, which is our first duo of people. We've got Jacquie Shenton and Carmen Angelique, our beautiful sisters here. So we'd love to welcome you both today. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you
Hello.
for having us.
Hey, and before we dive in, we're so honoured because we're diving into the topic of grief with you today, and especially how grief can serve as a gateway. But for those who are maybe not familiar with you in our audience, could you both start by just expanding a little on all the work and the magical gifts that you're both of you bringing into the world at this time, please?
Carmen, do you want to go first, love?
No, you can go.
So I'm Jacquie. Bless you. I'm Jacquie Shenton, and I'm part of the Priestess Presence Temple. I am a co-guide and lead in the Rosa Mystica Mystery School, and I'm also the program manager for the Rosa Mystica Mystery School. And we are there as sent priestesses serving the mysteries of life, death, and rebirth through the scent activation. So it's a beautiful mystery school. The Magdalene is woven into it. We use sacred embodiment. We work with the oils as a frequency to open this temple, this vessel, as a vessel of service and a vessel of light, and then to take that out into the world and to be a sent priestess in service and to bring the frequency of awakening to other people. So it's my heart, soul work, and I absolutely adore it. Outside of the Priestess Presence Temple, I am working with empaths and helping them to thrive, not just survive, the road and the journey that we call life, and that's transitions in a life experience and also transitions through death experiences, being that the death of the self that lives inside, or being that the death of someone close to them that's passed, or the death of a situation that has caused some kind of grief or rupture within the system. So I'm a busy person.
Beautiful, thank you, Jack.
And I have been studying and learning and serving in the Priestess Presence Temple since 2019. I joined, and I'm now a mentor in the Rosa Mystica program as well, which is just so beautiful and such an honor to serve in this exquisite a deep, truly deep program. And outside of the Priestess Presence Temple, I have a holistic therapy business, which I started back in 2016. It's called Love Healing. And through that time, it's gone through so many so many deaths and rebirths, really, so as I've evolved myself. But the main work I do is working with women usually who've been through abusive relationships or some kind of major life transition, and who are not feeling themselves. I help to wake women up again, to help reconnect them with their body, with their feelings, their emotions, their inner wisdom. And so part of that is feeling their grief as well. But with a bigger focus really on, not a bigger focus, a focus on pleasure and pain, like feeling the pleasure and pain, feeling all of it, transmuting it and bringing it into presence and bringing it into life and reawakening, stepping into your power. So, and aside from that, since 2019, I've worked I worked in the local hospice with people at end of life, with families and people as they reached the end of life, on the spiritual care team there. So I've worked as a soul doula as well. So this so these major life transitions, this grief is so huge, and such an honour for me to be able to walk with people as they go through this, these major transitions. So yeah, I'm so honoured to be part of the Soulful Rebirth programme as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Carmen and Jackie. It's just so beautiful how you describe it, and it's so close to my heart as well. And the whole topic of grief, I used to work years ago as a carer, so this topic of, you know, being with someone in the last days and weeks of their lives, it's so profound. And as you say, Carmen, such an honor to be there. So diving into that topic today, would love to talk more about grief, and especially in the context of this being treated as a cyclical process rather than linear one, where there is that definitive start and end. Is there a difference in how we can view grief when we look at it and approach it from the divine feminine perspective, and why that it can be so powerful?
Yeah,
I think for me, if we look at it from the linear, more masculine in your head concept, the beginning and end of grieving starts with the person dies or the situation completes. You have a funeral, you have a time frame, it's all done, dusted, it's all shoved under the carpet and forgotten about. And with the divine feminine way of looking at things, life is a process of life, death, rebirth, over and over and over and over again, minute by minute, day by day, hour by hour. All the time we are living, we are dying in a total cycle of rebirth and death. And what we learn to understand is that death is part of the natural cycle of things. Everything has a beginning, everything has an end. And when we're in grief and we spiral into a loss and abandonment situation, and we get kind of stuck in the loss part, and we don't move into the death and the rebirth part, that's kind of where things get stuck. So basically, in the divine feminine, we teach constantly that we go in and we go out of these stages, and we flow and we move, and we may have to go back and repeat it and pick up a different layer and go into a deeper part of it, but we are always moving in and out of endings and beginnings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, as you say, certainly in Western society, we're so conditioned that we have to hide our emotions, and so you might get 2 weeks off work, like you say, and then a funeral, and then it's back to normal. And life just isn't like that. Grief comes in waves, and there's so many. It's not just the sadness either. There's so many emotions around it. The anger, even the laughter and the joy. There can be laughter in grief, and relief. Even that's one that brings up a lot of shame when people feel really, but for me, the divine feminine way is allowing all of it and just being present with all of it, not punishing ourselves for feeling any of it, and knowing that there is no time limit on grief. You ride the waves as it comes, and it can last for days, months, years, or even a lifetime, and that's okay. It's welcome, to welcome that every part of it, and to love it as part of ourselves, and part of the experience that we've had.
That's so beautifully put, both of you. Thank you. And I can, as you're both talking, I can feel the difference in the way that you both hold space for that grief, and the softness in that, the care, the tenderness, the allowing, the love, that you hold for people who are working with you. And I've been fortunate to experience that firsthand from both of you. And it's, as you say, it's so different to this almost conveyor belt process that grief is sort of afforded in our society, or has been. So thank you for sort of really, really viscerally highlighting that major difference. So So could you please, because you Jacquie so beautifully described the many ways that grief can be experienced. You touched upon that as you were introducing yourself, and I'd love for us to just look at a little bit more. Can you share with us examples of the many forms that grief can manifest, please? Especially, as you say, in the light of us transitioning now from this form of reality that we've known, that we were all born into this new frequency of the new earth, and that transition. Can you sort of talk into the different forms of grief that people may experience individually, and then perhaps touch upon that we might feel as a collective now in our times, please?
I think what we forget is that grief is not just an experience of when someone dies. Grief, like life, death, and rebirth that happens over and over again, happens over and over again. For all of us, you grieve the loss of a job, you grieve moving and changing places and the loss of the situations and the people that you were connected with. You grieve the loss of an animal, you grieve the loss of a relationship, you grieve the stages of shifting from child to adult, or adult to elder, or starting your period and losing the freedom of the woman, the young girl that you were, to become the woman that you are, and then the menopause, and so on and so forth. There's so many different grieving processes that we can go through. And I think as a culture, we have lost the tools and abilities and skills to navigate those points of really important transitions, and the grief gets stuck inside of us. And it builds up and it builds up and it builds up. And also it gets negated because we live in a culture where you're not supposed to feel feelings like this. So you feel grief because this has happened to you. You don't really know what to do with it. So you shove it back down inside, and then something else happens to you and you shove it all back down inside. And you get this huge epidemic of overwhelm. Or everybody's walking around half asleep, shut down. So the culture we currently live in now, we're going through a massive transition, a huge global transition of patriarchy to expansion of humankind. And with that comes grief for the old and outdated, the world that we don't live in anymore, but we don't really know how to straddle into the new situation that we find ourselves in, and the disconnection from that world that we no longer belong in. And then the grief for the species that we should be, that we really aren't. And that particularly saddens people on the path of awakening, because as a species in our current paradigm, we are destructive and damaging, especially to the one place that we live upon, which actually really holds us in life, death, and rebirth. I mean, if we continue with the destruction that we're doing to the planet, we're going to have nowhere to live. And that is really sad, and can bring up a whole load of overwhelm inside of us. So the golden future that you were talking about, and the paradigm that we're living and looking towards, we must go through this gate of letting this grief go. We must go through this transition period of going into the underworld, relieving ourselves of all that we are carrying and the people around us, and then coming back to a new paradigm for us all to feel the beauty of what we should be living.
I love that message, Jacquie, and it reminds me, I just got back from a retreat in Snowdonia, and we had one workshop that we were doing exactly that exercise, what you're talking about now. It was in the infinity symbol, and we had it on the floor. And I would often forget. So as we walked, we had the birth, we had the seed, the sprout, the maturity, the fruits, and then the death. And, you know, everyone was in a different process because we would take up different topics for ourselves. And I found myself, you know, at the death part. And it came to me, I've realized being in the death, it was that light coming, as death is always the rebirth. And was that light and hope coming. So through the death and through the grief, so much hope coming at the same time, as long as we allow ourselves for all the feelings, like you say, for everything to flow, that it never ends, it always goes, as the infinity symbol. And I just found it it was really powerful process for all of us. And there was so much understanding at every different part. And I feel like grief and death is equal to hope and light at the same time.
Yeah, because they're two opposite ends of the spectrum. And if we don't feel the grief and we don't feel the destruction that's happening, we can't feel the joy and the light. Yeah, beautiful, Kate.
Could you share with us, because we would all, you know, see it differently, perceive it differently, and there's always wisdom coming through, always messages coming through. And if we could talk a bit more about receiving those messages from, let's say, other side, often from the loved ones who have passed, or from our guides, or specifically, let's say, how the birds can act as messengers in this way. And can you tell us also about this beautiful offering that you have coming up, the Soul Rebirth?
Sure, yeah. So it's my belief that birds are angels on this planet. I definitely do believe that. They're here in the physical realm and they go about their daily business while we don't need them, and then they bring us signs and symbols and directions and ways to go. They're one of my personal spirit animals, and I adore them because that's how I connect. I connect through the birds and their song and their how they appear to me and what they're doing, and then also the feathers that they leave me and the gifts that they bring. So I had a client once who received a white feather every day for 10 days after her mother passed. And I thought that was just so beautiful. And she still receives them today. Whenever she thinks about her, she'll go outside and there'll be a white feather around. And I think that's just a beautiful way of remembering that connection and having something in the 3D physical. When my granddad passed, I saw blackbirds for months, and they came up right up to the window and right in front of me, and I knew that was my granddad. And robins appear very often when you're thinking or experiencing connection to your ancestors. And if you listen to a robin song and you can tune into the robin's song, you can actually feel, well, for me anyway, I can feel the heartbeat of the ancestral connection through the robin, particularly the way the chest moves. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And swans, obviously. Swans are the guardians of the death mysteries. Beautiful birds, huge wingspans, bring themselves kind of up to full height. They hold the gate and the portal for the death mysteries. So Carmen, what experience do you have?
I could talk about this all day. I'm really lucky that I experienced the messages in so many ways from my loved ones, more often through feeling them, like feeling touch on, like my grandma puts her hand on my back, or and I hear voices and things as well. So I'm quite lucky. But my gran in particular, she comes as the robin. My gran always, as opposed to my grandma places her hand on my back. My gran comes as the robin, and she died 25 years ago. Yeah, a long time ago now. But last week, my dad passed away last year, and I was at his house a couple of weeks ago trying to sort out some things in his house, and I was trying to talk to my dad. My dad hasn't come through to me yet directly, but he's come via my gran, and so I was talking to all the stuff in the house, saying, is it okay if we do this, trying to get some communication with my dad. And I was getting quite upset and quite frustrated, and the tears started to flow, And so I went out in the garden, and I spoke to my dad, and I said, please, Dad, please, can you just show me a sign? And if you can't come through, can Gran come through, please? And I opened my eyes, and there was a robin right in front of me, like it had landed while I had my eyes closed. And I just said, okay, so now I know I'm on the right, it's all okay. And just that in itself just allowed another wave of grief. I just stayed in the garden a long time, just crying, releasing, letting go, and being able to, so that's one way the signs really help us, I think, not only to give us comfort, but just to help us, comfort that we know we're not alone. We know that death isn't a real, it's just a portal to the next chapter. But also allowing that emotion to unstick as well. So yeah, robins are my on my ground. So, yeah, beautiful, so beautiful, and it never ceases to amaze me as well. No matter how many times it happens, it's just the magic of it is so beautiful.
Beautiful, love. I remember when I first started creating the idea for Soulful Rebirth, I was invited to bring feathers into the social media, because again, feathers for me kind of bring home the truth of there is something else out there for us. And it was really interesting watching the path of people coming to do the market research calls with me following the feathers. I thought it was really beautiful. So the program is Soulful Rebirth. Carmen and I are going to be bringing that out soon. We're starting on the 31st of October, and it's a 6-week online journey supporting empaths who are in prolonged grief or intense grief to wake up and feel joy again. So basically, we're going to use divine feminine myth of the Inanna myth, essential oils, so scent priestess work, art therapy, and meditation, and actually bring you fully into learning how to come out of the paradigm of it's not safe to feel and step into the paradigm of I can feel and my emotions are valid, and moving those through the body through all of these tools, and then reconnecting the self to the part of whatever I lost didn't die. I can keep it in my heart and it doesn't have to cause me pain, because that's where we get stuck. That's the problem. We don't seem to be able to process the fact that when something or someone dies and an experience ends, we don't have to carry that pain for the rest of our lives. It doesn't mean that we've forgotten the person or the thing, or that we've let it go and it was never there. It was an experience that can live as love in the heart, because all grief is love that's lost the home. And when we bring love home again, the heart can heal.
Wow, thank you both, and what a gorgeous offering. I just wanted to chime in on so much of that because there's so much beautiful stuff, but I just wanted to start by saying thank you, because I am signed up to work with you on this course and I'm so excited. My parents, my mum and stepdad died suddenly over 5 years ago, and the grief I've processed a lot, but there's still a lot there, and I'm really looking forward to having the space and the time and the tools to work with that grief in a really safe and loving container. So thank you, and I know that so many other beautiful souls will feel that benefit. And yeah, I just wanted to share also the birds thing too. We have a pair of buzzards. My mum and stepdad passed at the same time pretty much suddenly, and they were both very vocal and very large personalities. We have these buzzards that circle our house most of the time and squawk, and they're not the most tuneful, if anyone's ever heard a buzzard, but I often think of them sort of having a little bit of black country banter up there, so I love that. So yeah, and I think, you know, it's just such a visceral connection, and as you said, Carmen, it just gives you that permission to actually sort of say, okay, that's, you know, those are my loved ones there. They're speaking to me, whether it's directly or indirectly, and being able to breathe and have a moment and connect into that love that you mentioned, Jackie, that, you know, it's, you know, we don't experience grief unless we love deeply, you know, so it's just beautiful. So yeah, so thank you both for just bringing this work into the world, because it's so needed, and just it's just so beautiful. So I personally can't wait, and we'll pop all the details for that in the show notes so that everybody can explore that, because I know there's still time to sign up. So thank you.
Sorry, before we move on to the next one, I just would like to ask a bit more, diving deeper into the grief. Because personally, because obviously if someone dies, then we can be aware we're experiencing grief. But what two of you would share, because I'd say from my personal experience, that very often we would experience grief, but we don't realize it. Is there any tips or how to navigate, how to, you know, detect that what I experience is grief, that, you know, what you offer can be helpful? Because I suppose can be so many different levels. Let's say in my case, I used to feel that emptiness in my heart and that longing for something, and I didn't realize that I was experiencing grief for so many years and was going through different, you know, stages, different feelings and different, you know, layers of it. So how can we detect, how do we know that what we feel can be grief?
I think from my perspective, grief can come in many emotions and many forms, one of which is anger. Anger that you can't get out of yourself, that you don't know how to express. One of which is depression. Like you said, that hole in your heart that you really don't know how to fill and you really don't know what to do with it. Lethargy, tiredness, similar sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Confusion. They're just some of them. I mean, grief isn't always just about crying or not crying or avoiding crying. I mean, I know when I'm overwhelmed with grief, there are certain situations that I watch on TV that I can't stop crying at. And that to me means there's a part of me that is grieving and resonating with what I'm being shown on the screen in front of me that still isn't healed inside of me, or that's still broken or needs tending to or needs some extra love. Carmen, what about you, love?
Yeah. As you were speaking, Kate, I was feeling into not just losing someone, but like a big life transition, even something like going through a divorce or an end of a relationship, that even if it's something you wanted, you're still going to grieve all the, you know, there's still a grief process to go through. And particularly those feelings of anger, rage, confusion, all of that can come up. And yeah, I think we don't often know that it's necessarily grief, but I think the key is if we can have the tools and the mechanisms to allow whatever emotions we're feeling, we're letting it out, even if we can't put the label on it. Because I think we don't necessarily think that we're grieving even like a job loss or yeah, there's so many situations that we grieve. You know, health changes, things like that. Getting older, my knees are very creaky today, and I've been feeling like really annoyed with myself that I'm not as just as supple as I used to. You know, just that aging process that is. And I know that I'm grieving an older part of me that I have to let go, and you know, but know that in the letting go, there's something much more, you know, just as beautiful to be reborn from that. But if we don't do the letting go and the full letting go, then how can we fully move into the joy of what is to come, especially in endings of relationships, or if we're hanging on, if we're clinging on to that, the old, quite often out of fear, you know, and particularly when we're thinking of transitioning to the, you know, straddling the two worlds. There's a fear in letting go of the old world because it's familiar and it's comfortable and it's what we know. But if we don't fully let go, then how can we fully step into the new and make way for all the beauty that is to come, that in that beautiful cycle of death and rebirth, So as I'm speaking, I'm feeling, I don't even know. So this is it. I don't know what it is. There's something coming up in me, and it's sadness, and it is grief, but it could be any of the things we've just talked about. It could be the older parts of me. It could be a end of a relationship. It could be the end of the old world. And so for me, it's allowing that, being present with it, not necessarily trying to understand what it is, and letting it pass, just like just going through the wave of that and letting it pass without overthinking, without trying to think, well, what is this? Just flow and let it happen. And yeah, so so it's still, yeah.
The most important part you're picking up on, Carmen, and it's the thing that we're going to cover in the training, is a lot of people don't realize there's an older version of you that needs to be grieved and died.
Yeah.
Because you cannot move into the newer version of you still carrying the older version of you with you. And this leads back to the divine feminine cycle of life, death, rebirth, and shedding the skin. You have to fully shed the skin of the older self in order to step into the new self.
And that's not always comfortable, is that, but it is worth it.
Exactly, and this is what happens, and this is where people get stuck, because we're not used to expressing our feelings or feeling those darker sides of things. When they come up, they're painful. And it's much easier to go, do you know what, stick a lid on that. I don't want to feel that at all. And what we're offering is the tools and techniques to be in that safe container, in that divine feminine holding and bubble, to surrender fully and to let that move through you.
That's so beautiful. There's so much in that as well, with talking about it actually physically, you've both touched on it earlier, and Kate too, that holding the grief in the body as as a stuck energy, a stuck emotion, or lots of types of emotions, but that are physically wedged in, and using the body as that tool in itself to create the space for it to process. So I think that's a beautiful part of what you're offering. And also the fact that, as you were talking about sort of that new version of yourself, I was thinking about the snake or the caterpillar, the butterfly carrying their old skin with them, or the butterfly carrying the pupa. It just doesn't happen, does it? In nature knows, it has that inherent wisdom to just release, and we've been conditioned the exact opposite, haven't we? That as you say, to stuff it all down, pretend it doesn't happen. Even death itself, is pushed under the carpet very much, I feel, in the Western world especially, isn't it? So opening that up and welcoming it as that natural part of our cycle is just so gorgeous. So yeah.
Well, and that's such a key side, isn't it, of the grief process? Do you know what I mean? Our own mortality. Because when we step into the death mysteries, we step into the mystery of our own death. And that's difficult. Because again, shove it in the cupboard, don't look at it. Don't want to look at all of that stuff. But you have, when you fully visit a grief cycle and you go through one fully, you have to come face to face with death inside.
It's absolutely true. And to do that whilst you're being held, I can't think of a better way, because it does take courage.
It does.
So really honoring you.
And there is a beauty in death, and there's a miracle in death. It's as much of a miracle as birth, really. But yeah, so I'm definitely very much looking forward to holding this safe container with Jacquie to allow people to go through, to face into the bits that really scare them, to be able to hold that container is so that you feel safe enough is just so powerful. And I think it will have very powerful results for everyone that comes on the journey.
Thank you. Oh, so I would love now to step into one of our favourite questions that we do like to pose to all of our beautiful guests, Kate and I, which is, could you share with us, please, Anna, and the listeners, one or maybe if you could share more than one of your most magical or angelic moments that have really sort of, we've touched upon the, you know, the birds and the feathers and those sort of signs, but perhaps a magical or angelic moment that's played a really transformative role in both of your journeys so far, and maybe also how the angelic realm specifically can aid us in the grieving process, please. You've got lots to share on that.
Tons of stories.
You go first.
So one that has now happened, it's happened 3 times now, and it happened I've had a lot of experiences lately, actually. I think the more I open up, the more incredible things happen, but specifically with the angelic realms, well, you know, Kirsty, I've had quite a few things in the past few months, haven't I? But yeah, so after my dad died, I was lying awake one night. I was just crying and crying and crying. I could not sleep. I could not calm myself down. So in one sense, I was letting it all go, but it was also, I was sort of starting to panic. I was getting to this point of control. It was the middle of the night. There was no one I could have called upon, and I just, in the end, I was like, okay, what do I do? And I closed my eyes and I asked Archangel Michael to come and protect me, come and take my pain away, to help comfort me, and just prayed to Archangel Michael. And then I opened my eyes and I looked up at the ceiling, and the light was coming through the window, but it made a massive pair of wings across the ceiling. And that has happened 3 times now. Whenever I call upon the angels in the middle of the night, I see a pair of wings when I open my eyes. So yeah, that's again, it's just comfort and confirmation, and just that feeling of overwhelming love, and just like, it's just like they're saying, you're not alone. You're you're not alone. We're here. We've got you. And every time that's happened, I've always instantly fallen asleep and had a really beautiful deep sleep as well. So it's like my worries are instantly gone. And yeah, so that's my angelic, my favorite angelic thing that's been happening lately. So yeah,
that's gorgeous. And you're wearing his colors today.
I am, yeah. By accident, actually, as well. It was just what I was trying to.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Carmen.
He's moving through you, Carmen. I mean, I've been deeply connected to the angels ever since I was a child, and yeah, I always create angelic circles before going into any kind of temple experience. The archangels are what hold the overriding temple experience for me. I create angelic holding for Reiki for most experiences. I call on Archangel Michael often if I'm in traffic or in fear in the car, because that helps me to feel safe. Because obviously driving in Britain's roads is a really interesting experience sometimes. Do you know what I mean? I think there's 2 angels we can call on for grief. There's Azrael, who is the angel of grief and transition, and there's also Raphael, who is the angel of protection and healing. Raphael is a stronger angelic presence for me because I've worked with him a lot more. But yeah, I love being held by angels, and one of the most powerful experiences I ever had was when I was going through a deep shamanic initiation and crisis for quite some time. And during the experience, it was very physical and very draining and very energetic. And right at the end of it, I was lifted up by Gabriel, and he sang Fields of Gold by Sting to me. And I was just like, whoa, okay. And I felt all of this like wing energy kind of like wrap me around and cradle me. And it really helped me to complete that experience as opposed to go into shock or continue to regurgitate it. So yeah, and we did a cord cutting exercise in Glastonbury, didn't we, Carmen?
We did, yeah.
On me, and Archangel Michael appeared like right across the center of the room, which was just totally beautiful because you said to me, "What's happening?" And I was like, "That there's an angel."
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
yeah, sorry.
go on. No, go on.
I was going. Did the person that we were releasing was transformed into didn't they?
Well, we couldn't
Probably?
work that out. We couldn't work out if he was transformed into an angel or if it was actually Archangel Michael who just appeared. Because all of a sudden there was just these giant wings and this giant sword in the air, and then the cord that we cut and the presence was gone in a puff of smoke. Do you know what I mean? So they're very recent. That one's very recent, and that one's quite sort of like imprinted heavily on both of our memories, I think, because we were both like, okay then.
Like when the power of magic sometimes it's, we know we're magical beings, and then something really magical happens. We go, wow, I didn't know I was that powerful.
Yeah.
It's just...
And Archangel Michael often appears to me as Pegasus. So I'll be setting up a circle and creating a space, and I'll call in the angels, and as soon as I call in Archangel Michael, there will be Pegasus energy there as well. So I think angels appear to us in many different ways and guises, and it's how we receive that transmission and imprint. I mean, I remember standing in the middle of anointing room, I think you were there, Kirsty, with Diana DeBro, and I had my hand on her heart and she had her hand on my heart, and we were kind of just standing here rocking, and I could see and feel wings growing from both of us and kind of like wrapping around the center of the room, and the frame of angels around the center of the room gathering as well. I mean, it's just a beautiful experience. I love the connection that I have with angels, and I wish everybody felt that.
Oh, I love that. Thank you both for sharing. And I love anytime we ask that question, we already can sense the presence, just mentioning them. It's already in the air. So just sending that message is really that simple. It's always with us, isn't it? And then moving on to our second, because we have the angels, magic, and joy. And that role of joy in our lives, that frequency of joy, and also maybe how and why this can be so important in the grieving process itself. How does that relate, and the frequency of joy in your lives, Carmen and Jack?
Okay, so I think for me, joy is the divine child. She is the innocent child, the one who has not been harmed, the muse, the one who brings the magic, the spirit, the being. And even as I'm speaking, Kate, your entire body's lighting up when you start speaking about joy and you start speaking about the divine child and the presence of the muse. And I think when we're grieving, or more when we've had a loss that's ruptured us, the divine child and the muse disappears, and she hides, or she turns and becomes the wounded child, the part of you that didn't get held or didn't get supported when you were younger. And for me, the death and the grief process is about stripping off these layers of the wounded child and letting them go, so we can recover the divine child and bring her forth and bring back the magic and bring back the joy. Because again, if grief is love without a home, when love has no home, magic has no energy. So joy cannot be present.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the thing similar really for me, the things that will bring me joy is when I try to recover that innocent child going out, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just, going out and standing in the rain and or climbing a tree, or all those things, making a potion in the garden, picking flowers. So just really simple pleasures that bring joy and bring joy back to that inner child. But yeah, I think if you don't experience the fullness of both ends of the spectrum of imagination, if you don't experience the extreme grief, then I don't know if you can truly experience the extreme joy. You can't have one without the other. And I think that's why there's so many people that are kind of teetering around this middle ground of not really, you know, the numbness, the disconnection that so many people are feeling is because they're not allowing themselves to feel either end of the spectrum. And we need both of it. We need all of it, and we need to reawaken that. I don't know what to call it. Wild woman is what's coming to me. You know, reawaken the wildness of feeling everything. Yeah. So.
Because the muse and the primal goddess both live in the same creative, energetic frequency.
Yeah. The primal goddess is more where I sit in terms of my wildness and my joy. But yeah.
But which is why we work so well together, because I'm more musy, I'm more divine child. Do you see what I mean? So you have two similar forces of joy and energy and power.
So just the ecstatic priestess, for example, you know, the ecstatic joy and ecstatic grief, it's all necessary. You know, it's not even welcome, it's necessary in my view. It's to be able to free her.
In order to feel safe and in the body and in your sexual energy, you have to feel safe and in the body and your divine child energy, because they both run the same protection level and wounded aspects inside of you.
Mm-hmm. And thank you. This can we book another hour in, please? Because
absolutely.
I was just going to pick up on that. You're talking about these, you know, the archetypes within the divine feminine mystery school of the 13 moon mystery school, which is part of the priestess presence offering that we're all a part of, along with the Rosa Mystica. And it's when we were talking earlier about you know, co-creating the new earth, and that the importance of us feeling and being able to feel both ends of the spectrum, feel both ends, those contrasts, so that we can then, they're both sort of, to me, I see them both as creative energies. You know, the divine child play, and the you know, the primal goddess, that sort of that sexual primal force of creative life force energy, and to have those both, you know, to sit within inside of all of us as we move forward. It's that, it just, to me, that supercharges our potency to create that beautiful earth, you know, because we're allowing ourselves to feel, as rather than being stuck in this, you know, this fear, really, where we're too frightened to explore either ends of the spectrum. So we're in this rigid, constricted energy where it's the opposite of the expansion that we're wanting to create, you know. So it's all beautiful the way it all weaves in, and you know, the divine feminine work with the angels, and you know, the embodiment and temple. It's just it's all such a beautiful weave. So thank you.
And I think this kind of like brings us into our sacral chakra, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? We're in the chakra, so we're in the belly. The belly is the root of all, the seat of all feelings, and underneath that sits our Shakti life force. And if we address the feelings, we address the wounded child, we come into the divine child, and then we open up the gates of the sexual sensual energy, which opens up the womb, which opens up the aspects of creation, which births things into the world. Which is why death then becomes rebirth and life.
So I feel there's a book coming through. You, Jacquie. Carmen, as you're talking. just planting the seed, the creative
Well,
seed.
I am going to be doing part of a book for the Magdalene Unveiled with Australia. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a chapter in a book next year about the Magdalene and how the Magdalene moves through grief and loss. That's going to be my chapter.
Be gorgeous. Oh, you'll have to come back on and talk some more about that, because
yeah, love to.
that I think we'd love to, both Kate and I would love to talk a little bit more also about the Magdalene Mysteries and the path of the Sister of the Rose and the Rosa Mystica and the oils and all of that gorgeousness. So please both come back on next year.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It has been an absolute joy, hasn't it, Kate? So thank you. And of course we will put the show notes we'll put the connections for Soul Rebirth in the show notes. What's the best way for people to contact you other than that container, both of you? Is there a best way?
You can see me on Instagram at Jacquie-The Rose. So at Jacquie-The Rose. Or you can email me, Jacquie@JacquieTheRose.com. And that's JACQUIE.
Thank you. Thanks, Jacquie. We'll put that into.
And my Instagram is at Love Healing with Carmen. Or I'm just about to launch a new website, which hopefully I could give you for the show notes as well. Well, my email is carmen@lovehealing.co.uk. So
Carmen's in her creative Soulful Rebirth fire.
I am. I'm shedding my old skin.
Oh, well, can't wait to see that. So thank you, my love.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you both so much. There's so much beauty and wisdom and just real freedom in all that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so
much.
And
wish you all the best of luck with the Soul Rebirth.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.